Assemblywoman Gabriella Romero represents the 109th District in the New York General Assembly. She joins us for the first time here on Decision Makers. Good to have you, Assemblywoman.
Hi, likewise. Happy to be here.
Excellent, excellent. So where is the 109th District? What does the population look like in terms of race, income, industry, and what makes it unique beyond being in the state capital? So I just gave a little bit of that away, but go ahead, describe the district.
So we are, as you mentioned, in the capital of New York State. I'm really lucky in the sense that we have an urban part of the district, the capital city of Albany, but I also have a suburban part of my district, Guilderland, and a rural part of my district, New Scotland. And in that sense, I am able to experience a very diverse constituency. I have urban, suburban, rural segments. I'm able to experience that just very diverse, but also working class experiences. And I feel like that's very unique for a member, and just really appreciative for every corner of my district. When I go to New Scotland, I'm learning more about the farmland issues, the very rural issues there. Going to Guilderland, kind of breathing in the suburban life and the issues that unify them there. And then Albany, which is my home, the urban life there. Obviously there's a ribbon of connection, of course, which is undoubtedly the affordability crisis that we're in the sense that everyone kind of is feeling the crunch of living. I would say that a lot of people want affordable housing. A lot of people are feeling the crunch of utility prices. And that really drives me to be the best representative, making sure that I'm representing every corner. But there are some unique parts about each section of the district. And so when we go and do our town halls in Albany and Guilderland and New Scotland, and the different towns and villages within each corner, we're making sure that we're bringing home to those sections a little niche responses to them as well, which has been really fun. I'm just finishing up my first term, so it has been, of course, like a learning experience, but a really, really fun tour, I guess, of the district in those more rural and like suburban parts as well. And they've been welcoming me with open arms. So I've just been having an incredible time.
That's fascinating. It's the first term. How did you fall into this space in the first place? Like, what made you run?
So I'm trying to do it in the short story of it all. I was in the public defender's office before I was in the assembly, and that exposed me to the issues in the governmental systems. I was a mitigation attorney, so that means that when someone is charged with a crime, but we agree that they committed that crime, we wanted to tell the judge and the DA we're going to give them a plan to get back on track. So I would be the attorney that's like, driving them to DSS, or giving them, creating a plan with my client to get them access to housing or mental health services or drug treatment services, or if they're a veteran, we're getting them connected with the veteran-specific services and the Veterans Bureau, and all of the different government-related services that exist. We are connecting my client with those things and creating a package to the court to make sure that those folks that committed that crime are not going to commit a crime in the future. That's what mitigation is. And in the process of doing that as a public defender, you get very familiar with all of those governmental agencies and systems that are there to help people and make sure that they don't commit more crimes, and or they're there to help people thrive, right? And I became, I don't know, I was kind of radicalized by that work because I found that a lot of those systems were either not working properly or were working against people, it felt like, in a lot of ways, and were just not very helpful. So, I would go back to certain agencies again and again and say, what the heck is happening here? Like, my client needs, and I don't want to call anyone out here on this podcast or any agency out, but I would go back time and time again and say, like, this person needs help. I was here yesterday, like, this person needs help. This person needs this explicit resource, or I'm knocking on your door again, And so, like I said, that kind of radicalized me, and I used that energy to get more involved in the political world. And I'm just very lucky that I was able to run for office with a team and a coalition that also agreed that those governmental agencies and services should be working hard for people. And that is their job and their function. So since I've been in office, that's kind of been my role. Really, really robust constituent service. No issue is too small. My team works really hard on making sure that we can solve people's problems, and that when you call our office and when we put on events, and that when we're going into the people, that we are deeply helping community. That's like the point. That's literally our point of being an elected official, is that we help people and make sure that the government agencies are working for the people, because when you call a government official, something is actually wrong, right? The agency is actually not working as intended if you have to call your elected official.
That I've never heard it framed that way before, like something's wrong. I guess in this sense, I've heard that framed in so many different ways that, your government's not functioning. Agencies are not doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing if suddenly I have to make a call to someone, my state legislator or my congressperson or anything like that. I probably heard that framed in different ways, but you framed it pretty straightforward. So, speaking of different agencies, government functions that you have to deal with in your district in Albany, so does it feel interesting or sometimes even weird, right, that your district is in Albany, which is the state capital, and at the same time that should present opportunities, right? Where you get the kind of resources that you need. So, or is there some kind of tension similar to what you just described, where people are not, they're calling your office and they're not getting what they need? People would just automatically assume that they are, because it's the capital, it's where the legislature is based, it's where the government, the government itself, the executive branch is based, all government functions throughout the state. So, is there that tension there that other cities like New York, Buffalo, Rochester, for example, they get more than you get? Talk a little bit more about that if you can.
Yeah, it is a little weird in the sense that the state capital, we have a lot of state agencies that are here. And so Albany uniquely has a lot of untaxable property. We do get reparation for that in some way through the state budget. We get what's called capital city funding. And actually, just to be clear on the numbers, about 2/3 of our property in the city of Albany is non-taxable. So think about the way that a municipality functions is through property tax. That's how you pay for police, fire. That's how you pay for all of your city agencies. And then cities sometimes kind of like pride themselves on not increasing property tax. The city of Albany struggles because we are the capital city, but we don't have that same massive revenue source because the majority of our state properties are in the city of Albany. And so we make that up in some way because of the capital city funding. just in this last budget that we just passed, we for the first time got massive recognition by getting a $20 million additional commitment over the next 3 years, $20 million for the next 3 years, acknowledgement of additional aid. But the city's also going through kind of like a very intense fiscal crisis, kind of similar to some of those other big cities that you mentioned, Buffalo, New York City. So it's a acknowledgement of the capital city intensity, while also acknowledging the fiscal strain that all of municipalities are going through. So now, I'm proud to have won that money for my municipality, but we have to start thinking forward, frankly, about revenue as well. This is not a new concept. A lot of other municipalities are thinking about how do I create revenue for my municipality that's not on the backs of working families. Those big, they used to call it the big five. We're calling it the big six now. Albany's going to be involved in that. We're going to Buffalo. I think it's Buffalo, Rochester, Yonkers. I'm going to forget one of them, the last two. But, at least in the assembly, we started saying the big six. I'm proud of that. Albany deserves its due, and at least in the political vernacular and those that talk about big funding in big cities, Albany deserves to be a part of the conversation. So when you talk about tension and awkwardness, as it relates to the state legislature and these other quote unquote big cities and quote unquote funding streams, the state legislature is here for half of the year. We deserve to be a part of the conversation, and this past year was a big part of inserting ourselves into there. So big things are coming. We're starting to be recognized in a way that we deserve by being a part of that funding stream just in this last budget. I can say, at least for my predecessors, that it definitely has been awkward in the past, in the sense that other municipalities have been recognized and we've definitely been left out. But there's a change that's coming, and I'm really proud to have led that charge in this last budget. So we're going to be seeing a lot of a different conversation once we start saying the big six.
When you talk about resources and new funding coming in, you've got to talk about, and I'm sure this is on your mind, Albany's poverty rate. So last I checked, it hovers around like 21%. It's pretty high. It's twice the poverty rate throughout the entire state. The Black poverty rate in Albany is like 8% higher than the national average. So why the high poverty in the capital city, and a capital city that's as big and powerful in a massive state as New York? And what's being done about that?
Yeah. And frankly, I think there was a New York Times article that came out saying Albany is one of the worst places to raise a Black child. So it's a mixture of historic redlining. It's a mixture of historic disinvestment. And, we're doing a lot to reinvest not only in our redlined neighborhoods, but make sure that we reinvest in the places that need it. How do we do that? Making sure that we can create new home ownership, but also make sure that people get access to actual housing that is real and actually affordable. We just kind of changed our zoning law, and this is for those that are looking into housing policy. I think that is one of the biggest ways to increase housing stock. And so people say that they're moving out of the city of Albany because they can't afford housing. By changing the way that we handle zoning, we're going to increase our housing, hopefully in a massively exponential way. And so by increasing the housing stock itself, the number of units, that will, the experts say that will decrease that will make housing more affordable within their city of Albany. Interested. I initially wasn't really on board with that idea. I think inclusionary zoning was a way to force developers to create more affordable units, but we can talk about that concept about whether or not more units will actually create more affordability, or if inclusionary zoning as a concept forces people to create affordable units when you create development on the initial onset. Either way, the city is making changes to confront affordable units. And in that way, in and of itself, we're making sure that people have affordable housing. The city is hopefully within the next year or two trying to create a pilot program that would create a project that would allow for new home ownership, meaning for that people would be able to create a collaborative process to purchase new homes. It's based off of a Boston model where people can purchase a multi-unit building that it needs a little bit of rehab, needs a little bit of investment. And they can go in together and maybe with another family member or with another family, or maybe they can purchase it themselves. And then there'll be a unit or two, maybe 2 or 3 family unit. This creates generational wealth. It creates obviously home ownership. And ideally, the purpose and the concept in that is that you're investing in neighborhoods that you are also living in. And I think that these small, but these projects creating more housing, the idea based on the Boston model is frankly not like a massive, large scale project. It's one that is probably going to be piloted. It's like a small idea, but it's one that is, you have to start somewhere, right? Like I just mentioned, the city's in the middle of a massive fiscal crisis. Like, that doesn't mean that we can't continue to focus on addressing the fact that Albany was named as the worst place to raise a Black child. Like,
Right.
that, we still have to address racial disparities. We can't ignore that. And so I'm really proud that we're going to continue to address and confront those things head on, which is great. So, that's just homeownership and affordable housing. We have a really beautiful summer youth employment program, making sure that young people get access to resources and opportunities over the summer, which is something that, addresses youth opportunity and make sure that young people have things to do over the summer, which is obviously really important. We can talk about young people and school and stuff like that, employment and education. I think that Albany has a lot to go with education as well, but maybe that's another conversation.
I did want to ask that I think you had told me about this offline about the cities or the city centers economic revitalization plan. It has, I guess there's this assumption that this will help with the broader city, if you revitalize the center.
Yeah. So my first 2 years ago, we won a $400 million investment within the 1 mile radius of the Capitol. That's for our downtown area.
That's from the state. That investment's from the state.
Correct. Yep, from the state. And so 200 of which is for capital projects, infrastructure projects. And the way that this is supposed to revitalize the downtown area is, one could say topically, economic investment, economic opportunity. But as you dig deeper, the concept of that additional investment is through, let me tell you a story. Let me back up. 3 years ago, we got a new pool, and it was the Lincoln Park pool. When I first walked into it, it was really, really beautiful. And you won't understand this unless you're like very local to Albany, but it felt like I was walking into a pool in Latham, which is a really beautiful and intense suburb in another part of the Capital District. But when I walked into here, I didn't feel like I was in the city of Albany. I felt like I was like, this is really, really nice. And I thought to myself, this is what Albany deserves. This type of and this level of investment is insane. And I walked around this really beautiful new pool, and I thought, people are going to go crazy with how beautiful and intense this level of investment is. And the way I feel and felt about the Lincoln Park pool investment is the way I want to feel about the $200 million investment of the $400 million that is coming to the downtown Albany area. Because Albany has been like left in the dust for too long, coming kind of like full circle to the tension that you mentioned before. We have been the subject of redlining. We've been the subject of like legislators coming here and like, eating our food and then just leaving. Ew, I hate Albany. The brunt of many jokes, the negativity. And so to have this like hundreds of, and it's not, people that know economic development know that like 200 billion is like not actually that much, but to prioritize public and private investment, to allow for this insurgent of intense investment, to make sure that we're picking and choosing good projects. I hope that we pick good projects where people can walk into these spaces and feel, whoa, this is really what Albany deserves, whether it's a massive housing project, whether it's like, a few beautiful green spaces, whether it's a waterfront project that gives people access to the waterfront. I think that my city deserves that feeling that I felt walking into the Lincoln Park pool. And I wish you had the opportunity to like show that to the podcast listeners, but they don't have that. But it's just, right. It's very colorful. It's so, it's like a bunch of beautiful slides, the pool. And if you knew what the Lincoln Park pool looked like before, it's just total transformation. Mm-hmm. I want every project to be that level of total, absolute revitalization, because we deserve it. And because those areas of Albany, for the record, have been forgotten, promised things and ignored, right. Think they don't deserve good projects. Those schools are the ones that are in receivership and ignored. That area has been just absolutely divested for such a long time. So, long-winded answer, but like.
Well, sorry, it's just reversing the broken windows effect, essentially.
Yeah.
In a place like Albany, right?
Yeah. Like an injection of true joy, positivity, and you deserve this money.
Got it. Yeah. Speaking of budgets, so lawmakers in your assembly and said, they finally approved the budget for the upcoming fiscal year 26-27, and it was like weeks of delays on that. It really, you went through a bear of a process trying to get that budget passed finally. The governor ended up signing it. $270 billion, and it was actually a $14 billion increase, right? And that was compared to the previous fiscal year. It's actually I think it was like nearly $6 billion more than what the governor had proposed. So what satisfied you about that budget? What didn't satisfy you about that budget? If you can lay that out for us. Why did it take so long?
So it took a long time because we do policy in our budget, instead of just fiscal concepts. And we were negotiating some pretty serious topics that we were trying to get right. One of the most important topics that I am really, really proud of was our immigration package. And some of which were, first in the nation, some of which I think New York thought we were first in the nation. I think our leadership might want to think that we were leading in that way, but there are definitely some other municipalities and frankly other states that are leading the way. But our package as a whole, really strong and really great. It included demasking law enforcement, meaning that it requires ICE, but also local and state law enforcement to take off facial coverings, which we are actively defending in court right now. It included my bill, which creates a state cause of action in state court to sue ICE, but also codifies the state and local law enforcement, but allows us to sue ICE when they violate our constitutional rights which is really exciting and very great moment for me to include that bill in the budget. It also creates an office in the New York State Attorney General's office of immigration integrity, which is helpful and important for all of these other concepts that we're creating in that immigration package. And there, there's a few other bills that were really, really important for us that we debated on the floor and pushed forward. But that immigration package was just a really important part for us that our governor led on, and then the legislature fought, which took so long, obviously, which is why the budget was late, to add in all of those other components. I'm trying to think of the other ones. We ended 287G agreements, which was at its lowest level, allows for ICE detainees to be housed at local jails, and at the more formal ending of 287G agreements, deputizes local law enforcement to do the work of ICE. That's a 287G agreement. And, there's many other components of the immigration package, but figuring out each of those details, like each thing that I just said, took many weeks of conferencing with the legislature. Leadership goes back to talk to the governor's office. Then the Senate has to do their own version of what I just said as well. We reformed auto insurance to make sure that we are getting rid of the ability for fraudsters to take advantage of that system. Ideally, people are getting lower rates on their auto insurance. As a former lawyer and litigator, and some of the other lawyers that conference that issue, I am hoping that one shakes out the way that we wanted it to. That was a very hot and controversial topic. For your original question asking about what I'm upset about, I'll say I just really don't know if we hit the mark the way I wanted to on utility bills. That was just truly the absolute number one issue in my office constituent wise, was people coming to us. People, let me also be honest, and small businesses, commercial entities, and residential, i.e. constituents, both entities coming to my office saying that their utility bills are out of control. And, my staff and me, I'm a renter, just so we're all clear, everyone, even homeowners, every single person in the entire New York State coming to my office saying that they cannot afford their utility bills. So in conference, and I'm not alone, everyone says we have to do something on utility bills. And we did short-term and long-term measures to get people money back in their pockets and change the rate setting process with the Public Service Commission to make sure that so we did do something on utility bills. But what I really wanted to see was more consistent and actual money back in people's pockets that was more substantive than what they're getting now. Right now, we created something that will give people a rebate check that's really only in the fall months. I think it's like the months from maybe September or October until December. So it's like a few months of rebate checks. And I believe that they're taxable. You're missing the mark there. And yeah, I'm not saying that money will not be substantive, and some people will undoubtedly benefit from that. Families will receive reprieve, and that's great. What I wanted to see was something more consistent in a way that is more substantive, that will actually receive a better benefit. I think we could have gone further, and we just didn't. And we did nothing for the commercial entities, which are really getting hit the hardest. Small businesses are closing, and they're creating not bad product, but I'm just saying, like, small businesses are hurting. They're providing, that's trickling down to us as consumers. They're providing less stuff on their menu. They're purchasing worse quality product. Like, that affects everything in business when they have more bills they have to pay. And so I don't want that to happen. I love our small businesses, and we're forgetting that when we just did all of those other things for those ratepayers, we're not doing anything for our small businesses, and they're suffering so tremendously. And we didn't do anything for them in the budget. So
Yeah, oh, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying we like completely missed the mark, and
Yeah,
they're gonna suffer. So
yeah, I was real curious too. Massive budget, you were able to increase, or the legislature wasn't able to increase the amount of money in it. How were you all able to do that? Because there's a lot of fiscal budget belt tightening that's going on in the states right now. So, especially because of the money that's coming from the federal side of things. How was that accomplished?
yeah, I don't know logistically how that was accomplished.
Mhm.
I think there was just more spending that came in the last few days, and in the end, I do hope that in the end, I'm sure that it'll make sense for New Yorkers, but those small businesses, I fear that that will probably be a harsh one for them. I have trust that there's probably a program that I don't know about in the budget that helps small business, but I fear that it's not helping with utility bills at the moment.
Oh, I know you work quite a bit with or you're a member of the Black Puerto Rican Hispanic Caucus
Yes.
legislature. So massive caucus where you all bring your votes together. Big powerful punch. Kind of push legislation through or push priorities through. So what are those priorities right now? Particularly as it relates to Black and Hispanic. We talked about Black poverty rate earlier, especially in places like Albany. But what are those major issues right now that's being worked on, particularly as it relates to Black and Hispanic constituents, Black, Hispanic, Puerto Rican constituents in districts like your district, but also elsewhere in major cities in the state?
One of the biggest issues that we passed legislation on was deed theft, and I was really proud of my colleagues, especially downstate, that really were able to address this and pass legislation in the session to tackle that head on. I'm proud of them, and we'll see kind of if that. I'm sure the governor signed that bill, but I know that that was a really pressing topic for a lot of, especially the Black Task Force. I'll say that I was involved in a lot of conversations about the illegal gun trade and tackling gun violence. And something that we passed in this budget was a measure to crack down on the production of 3D printed guns.
Mhm.
When I was a public defender, we saw in our courtrooms that people were actually creating guns, and being prosecuted in the court for the creation and use, illegal use, obviously, of 3D printed handguns. And in this budget, we are trying to address that by uh, making it a crime to possess um, the software to actually print these 3D printed handguns. So in a way, it's preventative, like trying to actually prevent the software of the 3D printed handgun. And then the second most, I think, important and intense part of that is that once you have the 3D printed software, there's one small little but very important part, which is that if you have the handgun, there's a little switch that you can add to the gun, and it's not only just Glocks, but there are other handguns as well that you can add as a switch to these handguns, and it actually makes the gun itself automatic. We made that little switch not only illegal to 3D print it, but we said that any gun manufacturer in New York State is unable to have that little switch itself be on the handgun. And that's really important because the fact that that little switch itself on the gun is able to turn a otherwise regular, semi-automatic gun into an automatic gun in unacceptable and not allowed. So we're trying to address gun violence through and all creative mechanisms available to us. So that was a really interesting road that we went down, understanding more about how these guns are created, understanding more about that switch, how that switch creates, that gun mechanism. So that was a measure that we were, the caucus was proud to support, and one that, it was passed and was actually in the budget. Moving forward, I think a big thing that people are focusing on as well is prison reform and how we can kind of get back to some level of normalcy in the New York State prisons. I'm not sure if your listeners know, but New York State went through a really big event a few years ago when there was the wildcat strike in the New York State prisons, meaning that the New York State corrections officers went on a wildcat strike, and a lot of the governor said that those corrections officers cannot come back to work. And then she brought in the National Guard to make sure that the prisons can continue operating. The National Guard is still there and still present in our New York State prisons, but we need to obviously, and I guess not obviously, but our prisons need to continue operating. And it's very costly to have the National Guard there. So that's, hundreds of millions of dollars going to the National Guard. We need to get back to a sense of regular normalcy. Our National Guard is not really supposed to be staffing our prisons. And we need to figure out a way to get back to a place where our National Guard is not in our prison system, and our COs and frankly our incarcerated people are in a place where everyone is, both staff and people that are incarcerated, are feeling a homeostasis that is safe and regular. That's going to take a lot of time and a lot of work. And you can't just put your head in the sand when something's really challenging. You have to dig in and figure out what are the issues, how can we get there? Because I think since the National Guard has gone into our prisons, people have said, oh, it's working, let's just keep throwing millions, hundreds of millions of dollars at it, and we'll let the National Guard stay there. We can't let the National Guard stay there. We have to figure out a way to get back to homeostasis. So I'm very interested in tackling that issue with the caucus. And it's going to take some people that, know and care about the criminal legal system. So a few people are visiting some prisons this summer, and we're gonna tackle that one head on.
All right. Thanks again, Assemblywoman Gabriella Romero, joining us here for Decision Makers. Go to assembly.state.ny.us if you want to get more information about the Assembly. We're done with this episode. I'm Charles Ellis, and I'm your executive producer and host. So we want to give a warm round of gratitude to our partner, the Council of State Governors, especially, or state governments, that is, especially the Council on Communities of Color at the Council of State Governments Eastern Region. You can find this episode and more at thebnote.com while you're subscribing, of course. Thank you for watching, and please stay safe out there.